You know those statistics you see flying around on social media, the ones that seem so specific and so official that they just have to be true? Well, today we're going to pull one of them apart. We're deconstructing a viral statistic about Ireland's population, so here's the claim that's been making the rounds. 1 in every 4 people in Ireland is a foreigner. Wow, that's a really powerful and specific statement, and it's gotten a ton of traction online. So we're going to dig in and see if the data actually backs it up. Here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the claim itself. Then we'll walk through the simple and kind of flawed math they use to get there. After that, we'll uncover the 4 crucial pieces of the puzzle that are almost always left out. Then we'll run the numbers again for a much more realistic picture. And finally, we'll talk about why getting these details right really matters. Okay, so let's start with the viral statistic itself. Now, this isn't just some number pulled out of thin air. It's often presented as a cold, hard fact, using what look like official statistics to give it a real sense of authority. And on the face of it, the logic seems pretty straightforward, right? You take a real number from the 2022 census, you add everyone who has immigrated since, and then you divide by the total population. But as we're about to see, that calculation is missing some absolutely crucial pieces. So let's get into the details. How exactly do they calculate this number? We're going to walk through the exact step-by-step arithmetic that leads to this viral figure. It's simple for sure, but you'll see pretty quickly why it's also incomplete. Alright, here's the recipe. Step 1. You start with the 631,000 non-Irish citizens that were recorded in the 2022 census. That's a solid number. Step 2. You add all the immigration figures since then. That's about 416,000 people. You add those together and you get just over 1 million. Then the final step, you divide that total by a population of, quote, around 5 million. And there you go. That's how you get that really eye-catching 1 in 4 ratio. When you see it laid out like this, the math seems to check out, doesn't it? But here's the thing. The problem isn't with what's being added, it's with what's not being subtracted. And that brings us to the really interesting part, the 4 missing pieces. The simple calculation we just went through leaves out 4 critical factors that honestly completely change the final result. First up, population growth. The viral claim uses the 2022 population number as its foundation. But Ireland's population didn't just hit pause in 2022, it kept growing. Just look at the actual numbers here. The population grew from 5.15 million in 2022 to an estimated 5.46 million by 2025. By using that older, smaller number to divide by, you automatically make the final ratio look way bigger than it actually is. Alright, number 2 on our list of missing pieces, emigration. That simple calculation only counts people coming in, but population movement is a two-way street. It completely and conveniently ignores the huge number of people who have left Ireland during that exact same time. And we are not talking about a small number here. Between 2023 and 2025, almost 200,000 people emigrated from Ireland. That includes both Irish and non-Irish citizens. To just ignore this massive outflow while counting everyone coming in gives you a completely warped picture. Now, this next one is really interesting and it's a little more subtle. A big chunk of the people counted as immigrants are in fact returning Irish citizens. That's right. The official immigration statistics include tens of thousands of Irish nationals moving back home after living abroad. They are technically part of the immigration inflow, but are they foreigners? Of course not. So including them in a count of non-nationals is just a fundamental error. And that brings us to our 4th and final missing piece, naturalization. See, a person's citizenship isn't always set in stone. People who were non-Irish citizens back in 2022 can and absolutely do become Irish citizens over time. In fact, since that 2022 census, at least 40,000 people have been granted Irish citizenship. That means they are no longer non-Irish citizens living in the country. But the viral calculation fails to account for this change, which again just pushes its final number even higher. So the big question is, what happens when we plug all these missing pieces back into the equation? Well, let's just say the difference is pretty dramatic. Okay, let's run the numbers again, but this time let's do it right. We start with the same census number and we add the same immigration figure, but then we subtract the nearly 200,000 people who emigrated and we subtract the 40,000 who became citizens. And instead of over 1 million, we land at a number closer to 808,000. And that's actually being conservative. So what does that give us? On one side you have the viral claim, 1 in 4. But when you look at a much more realistic picture, a picture that actually includes all the key data, the number is closer to 1 in 7. That is a huge, huge difference. And this really gets to the heart of it all. Why do these details matter so much? Because this isn't just about crunching numbers. It's about understanding how information gets framed and sometimes twisted in our public conversations. A big part of the confusion here comes down to the words we use. Terms like foreign-born and non-national get thrown around like they're the same thing, but they're not. Someone can be born outside of Ireland, but then later become an Irish citizen. So they are foreign-born, sure, but they are not a non-national. Mixing up these two distinct categories is one of the key ways these figures get so inflated. So we've seen how just a few simple omissions can create a statistic that's dramatic, but also deeply misleading. It just goes to show you that behind every big flashy number, there is a story about what was counted and, just as importantly, what wasn't. It kind of leaves us with a final question for you. What other numbers in your newsfeed deserve a second